It didn't seem particularly noteworthy. In 1963, a modest, somewhat peculiar car was quietly parked on a British high street. It was priced for working families that just needed to commute from point A to point B. Stay with me for another 30 seconds before you decide on this car, though, for what was concealed within this machine will truly alter your perception of the little cars of that era. An engine straight out of Formula One racing was located beneath that very unremarkable body. The same family of engines that had participated at Le Mans. Legends like Jack Brabham drove championship-winning cars with the same technology. And it was installed in a car that regular British families could genuinely afford to purchase, discreetly and without any fanfare. Even though more than 440,000 of these were produced over the course of 13 years, sold under 6 different names, constructed on 6 different continents, and motivated by educators, nurses, manufacturing workers, and rally supporters, hardly anyone discusses it anymore. This is the full, unvarnished story of the Hillman Imp. How it outperformed the Austin Mini in almost every technical aspect that mattered, how it won Britain's most prestigious racing championship 3 times in a row, and how, in spite of all that true genius, it still vanished entirely from British roads by 1976. Furthermore, the majority of people are unaware of the true cause of its disappearance. Since the entire Imp story begins with a crisis rather than an automobile, let's go back to the beginning and begin with a fact that sounds almost too amazing to be real. Due to severe gasoline shortages brought on by the Suez Crisis in 1956, millions of households suddenly found themselves in need of small, affordable cars. When the Austin Mini debuted in 1959, the Roots Group, the manufacturers of Hillman, Sunbeam, and Singer automobiles, realized right away that they needed a true solution. Something small, clever, and capable of competing with Alec Isagonis's brilliant little front-wheel drive machine and actually winning customers away from it. Under the internal codename Project Apex, they developed a truly radical solution that was neither safe nor conventional. Since Roots lacked a good tiny engine of their own, the engine is where you first notice radicalism. They so made a phone call that would eternally define this vehicle. They named the firm Coventry Climax, whose engines had won Formula One Grand Prix races, propelled Le Mans contenders to the top of the field, and were regarded as some of the world's best and most advanced lightweight racing machines. The engine became the heartbeat of the Hillman Imp when it was meticulously modified and attuned to 875 cubic centimeters and 39 horsepower for daily road use. It was made entirely of aluminum. It was equipped with an overhead camshaft. It was more sophisticated and lighter than nearly every other tiny automobile on the market at that price. It also made the Imp one of the first British automobiles to be mass-produced and sold with real, verified racing DNA beneath the hood. By direct comparison, the Austin Mini had a pushrod valve system and a heavier cast-iron engine block, which was technically a generation behind what the Imp was subtly providing at the same price point. This is the aspect that will truly deter you, though. Many serious mini racers in the 1960s and 1970s did not tune their own engines harder when they sought more power and dependability from their racing cars. They installed the Imp unit in place of their engines after removing them entirely. Because the Coventry Climax-derived engine was plainly the better piece of equipment, even the opposing teams, those who earned a living by outperforming Imps on track, admitted in private. That is not a minor issue. That is the competitors admitting firsthand that the Imp's engine was superior. Now, Mike Parks was the engineer who really oversaw the design of the Hillman Imp. Almost no one is aware of what happened to Parks after he completed his work on this small economic car, which is one of the most notable footnotes in British automotive history. Parks joined Ferrari and competed in Formula after leaving Roots. In 1966, he achieved pole positions and podium finishes at the highest level of world motorsport. Later, he served as the lead development engineer for the renowned Lancia Stratos, one of the most renowned rally vehicles ever produced. A conservative group of cost-cutting accountants did not develop the Hillman Imp. A man who would later work with Ferrari influenced it at its most crucial early phases. You listen to that tiny engine with whole different ears once you realize that. Now, there is a third technical feat hidden inside the Imp that the Austin Mini simply could not match. It involves something as basic and commonplace as shifting gears, and here is the part of the story where most people do not see what is coming. The Imp was equipped with a fully synchromesh 4-speed gearbox, which meant that the driver didn't need to use any special skills or techniques because every gear change was seamless and effortless. In the age of automatic gearboxes and paddle shifts, that seems very commonplace. However, in 1963, it was thought to be so technically difficult to achieve full synchromesh in a small, reasonably priced economy car that Alec Isagones, one of the greatest automotive engineers Britain has ever produced and the man who designed the Mini, reportedly said it was not feasible at that price point. Nevertheless, Roots did it. They installed it as standard equipment, engineered the impossibility, and hardly mentioned it in the advertisements. Keep watching because the next part of the narrative is quite bizarre and, to be honest, a little painful because the engineering genius is going to clash with a choice that no engineer in the building would ever have made. The Midlands, where Roots had a skilled workforce, well-established supply chains, and decades of manufacturing expertise, was not where the Imp was constructed. It was constructed in Linwood, a Scottish town outside of Glasgow, and nearly everything that went wrong later can be explained by that one choice. Roots were given substantial financial incentives to construct their brand new facility there rather than where it made sense because the British government needed to create jobs for the areas devastated by the long-term loss of the Clyde shipbuilding sector. The Linwood employees had no prior automotive manufacturing experience. Almost from the first day, the industrial relations were challenging. Throughout the factory's existence, production was frequently interrupted by strikes. The aluminum engine blocks were cast at the Linwood factory in Scotland, loaded onto trains, sent hundreds of miles south to Coventry for precision machining and final engine assembly, then loaded back onto trains and shipped hundreds of miles north to Scotland once more to be fitted into the waiting car bodies. The supply chain that developed around this arrangement was, by any reasonable measure, nearly unbelievable in its inefficiency. Each and every engine, each and every time. There was no other way to make the system function, so they had to travel back and forth across the whole length of Britain. Inadequate cooling, gearbox issues, malfunctioning chokes, and a continuous propensity to leak water were among the obvious effects of this instability on the early Imps that were sold to consumers. As a result, owners were extremely irritated and reluctant to suggest the car to their friends and family. Years later, an Edinburgh man recalled that in cold weather or heavy rain, his father's 1965 Imp just wouldn't start consistently. The vehicle was manufactured in Scotland. In Scotland, it was being sold. Furthermore, it was unable to withstand Scottish weather. In the 1960s automotive market, where consumers spoke to neighbors and co-workers and relied more on personal experience than advertising, the reputational damage from the first 2 or 3 years was severe and nearly difficult to restore. However, the engineers had produced something so fundamentally and truly well-conceived that even production turmoil and manufacturing suffering could not kill its underlying potential. This is the part of the Imp tale that deserves to be shared far more extensively than it has ever been. Because the Hillman Imp was simply unbeatable on the racetrack, where the engineering underneath matters more than the caliber of the factory that manufactured it. The renowned Tulip Rally was won outright in 1965 by a works-prepared Imp piloted by Rosemary Smith, an Irish factory driver of exceptional skill and calm resolve. Tiny Lewis's second works Imp finished just behind her in second place overall. Not second in the class. Overall, second. In opposition to the entire international field. In response, Roots developed a unique homologated rally Imp with a 998 cubic centimeters engine that was produced in certified batches of 1,000 vehicles in order to comply with competition standards. These vehicles were then made available to private consumers who wished to participate in racing themselves. Then, in 1970, 1971, and 1972, a privateer team put together and trained by George Bevan, led by Bill McGovern in a Sunbeam Imp with a badge that was mechanically identical to the Hillman, won the British Saloon Car Championship 3 times in a row with little factory support and a budget that the professional works teams would have regarded as pocket money. The British Touring Car Championship, one of the most renowned and most fought tin-top racing series worldwide, is what we now refer to as that championship. The Hillman Imp has won 3 times, according to its records. In the meantime, something quiet and very depressing was taking place on Britain's regular roadways. The Imp was the most affordable new automobile on the road by the early 1970s. From a technically sophisticated, race-bred mini-fighter with a Coventry Climax heart to a low-end runabout that people only selected because nothing else on the forecourt had a lower price tag, that one statistic sums up how utterly its public image had plummeted. A customer who had heard from a neighbor that the car broke down in the rain didn't care about the motorsport victories. Almost abruptly, the communities that had spent 13 years producing each of those 440,032 automobiles lost their biggest employment when production halted in March 1976 and the Linwood factory permanently shuttered next to it. The economic damage caused by that closure, according to observers writing about Linwood decades later, never fully recovered. In terms of engineering philosophy, the Hillman Imp was superior to the Austin Mini. On the racetrack, it outwitted it. Rival racers admitted that it had a better engine, more sophisticated electronics, and a driving experience that is still warmly and affectionately described by aficionados today. And it was defeated in the marketplace not by a superior vehicle but rather by a hurried and ill-prepared launch, an impractical factory situation brought about by political choices rather than industrial reasoning, and the harsh fact that a damaged reputation spreads more quickly and endures longer than nearly any accomplishment in the automotive industry. Drivers who discover a well-kept these days, Imp consistently describes the same feeling. The free-revving, alive little engine, the rear-engine balance and agility through a corner, the unmistakable sense of driving something that was quietly, stubbornly, genuinely ahead of its time, concealing all of its ambition inside the most modest body imaginable. Have you ever owned a Hillman Imp or one of its relatives, such as a Sunbeam Sport, Sunbeam Stiletto, or Singer Chamois? Because this little car deserved far better than what happened to it. Please share your memories in the comments section below. Every story shared about it helps to preserve that memory in its proper place.